Have you ever struggled with your tactics or not quite fully understood what every team instruction meant in Football Manager? This video, we will be explaining every single team instruction in the Tactics Creator screen, helping you create your own tactic. So in the video, we will be going through every team instruction with some tips on when to use certain instructions as well, maybe what attributes you will need for certain instructions. This should help you create your own tactics in Football Manager. But before we start, if you are enjoying my type of content, make sure you are subscribed, like this video as well. That is so important in helping this channel grow. But also, you can leave a comment if you have any tactical recommendations or any video ideas. But for now, let's get stuck right into this video. The very first thing we can start off with is the mentalities. Now you have 7 different mentalities. The very defensive and the very attacking are the two very or really extreme mentalities. Those mentalities are rarely used, but the ones in between is where you can find a bit more balance between the mentalities. So with the very attacking mentality, that makes your team play more intense, off the ball and on the ball as well. So with the very attacking mentality, we can see with the trigger press, that is now on slightly more urgent. The moment we change that to very defensive, you can see now that it's slightly less urgent, and you can see that your intensity bar has dropped as well. So the more defensive you go, the less intensive you are as well. On the ball, we can see that the passing is now on slightly shorter and the tempo is on much lower. So on the ball, you are taking a lot less risk than when you are with very attacking or with attacking. Now you can see that we are slightly more direct, we are on much higher, and the time wasting, you can't really time waste on very attacking. But you can find some better balance in between. So if we go to positive, we are with the standard passing directness now, but the tempo is on slightly higher. And out of possession, we are on slightly more often with the press and trigger. But if we go on cautious, we can see that the trigger press is now on standard. So with the mentality, the higher you go, the more intense your team will be. If you want to play possession-based football, it is recommended that you do go with the balance or the positive. If you want to play counter-attacking football, that doesn't mean that you have to go cautious or defensive. You can actually use the attacking mentality, as that plays more direct, looking to get the ball further forward in a more urgent fashion. If you do want to play that counter-attacking style but with the attacking mentality, then it is advised not to use a high or a much higher line of engagement. You can leave it on standard and the standard defensive line as well. There you are sitting more in the mid block kind of, and you aren't pressing too aggressively, and this allows you to maybe win the ball in the mid third or even in your defensive third and then spring a quick counter attack. Now with the attacking width, this is all about where you want to move the ball when you are in possession. Now this is not to be confused with the focus play. If you do want to focus down the flanks, then of course you will want to use these instructions, and if you want to focus your play through the middle, then you will want to use this instruction here, focus your play through the middle. The attacking width is all about how wide or how narrow you want your team to channel their play. So for example, if you are playing that from the back and you want to use the full width of the pitch, then you are advised to be using from fairly wide to very wide. And if you want to channel your play through the central zones and be a little bit more direct by hitting those vertical passes, then you want to be using from fairly narrow to very narrow. Pass into space is like asking your players to hit more through balls. You're trying to get the ball into players' paths to run onto rather than playing the ball into their feet. This can help increase your tempo, not directly with the tempo instruction, but of course if you're playing the ball into your player's path and then you're asking your players to sprint onto the ball, things may start to happen in a more quicker fashion. Now for overlaps and underlaps, this isn't strictly for your wider players. This is mostly for players positioned in those wider areas, and this could be your central midfielder, not necessarily always your winger. So your central midfielder may find themselves in those wider areas, and if he does, he may look to hold onto the ball, looking for that overlap or the underlap, whichever instruction you are looking to use. Now with the overlap, you are looking for a player to come on the outside. So let's say for example, you have your right winger on the ball, your right wing back will be looking to make that forward run on the outside of him and looking to overload on those wider areas. For the underlap, it's very similar, but instead of going on the outside, you will be coming and making a run on the inside. This can work very well for someone like inverted wing backs, but now for that wide centre back role as well, your wider players could look to hold onto the ball, allowing for your wide centre back to make that forward run into that half channel, causing danger for the opponents. So don't forget, the overlap and the underlap isn't just for your wingers and your wider players, it's also about the players who are positioned in those wider areas at any given time during the 90 minutes. For the focus play, we've already touched on that. Of course, if you want to attack and play more intense through that central channel, then you want to focus through the middle, and likewise for the flanks, if you want to attack more intensely down those flanks, then make sure you do focus your play down those areas. And play out from the defense, I think that we all have an idea what that means. When your defense has the ball, they will be looking for an option to pass rather than clear the ball. Also, this instruction may instruct your defensive players or your defensive minded midfielders to drop deep from midfield to collect the ball. This can be your central midfielder or it could be your defensive midfielder. When you are looking to play out from the defense, certain players will look to drop to collect the ball. And for the attributes, you will be looking for players with good first touch, decent off the ball, decision making and composure when they are on the ball as well. Not every single player or team will be able to play out from the back in a smooth manner. Passing directness is very important. It's all about the intention of the pass and how direct you want to be. A more direct approach will look to get the ball further forward, but also in a more vertical manner. So they will look to get the ball straight from defense to attack. Let's say you have a target man, your central defenders will be looking for that target man, and that will be a straight vertical ball over the top. But if you are looking to play with a more shorter passing directness, your players will look to take their time on getting the ball further forward and look to use the wider areas as well. So direct is all about getting the ball from defense to attack as quick as possible, and the shorter passing is being more patient, where you can use the wider areas and the central areas waiting to unlock that defense. The tempo is also very important, but it's also linked with the passing directness. So naturally, the more direct you go, the more quicker the tempo will go. And of course, with the shorter passing, the slower the tempo will be. But the tempo is all about how quick your players will make the decision on the ball. The higher the tempo, the quicker the player will look to release the ball from their feet. And the slower the tempo, the more time the players will take whilst they're on the ball and looking to approach the game. In the final third, you can change your crosses from floated crosses, whipped and low. For the low crosses, your players will look to cross the ball along the floor. For whip crosses, they are looking to play the ball into the box at pace, and for floated crosses, they will look to get the ball into the air, trying to take advantage of any tall players. So again, for an example, if you have a target man, floated crosses may be for you, as they will look to cross the ball into the air, taking advantage of that player's height. Whipped crosses is very good if you have pacey players or very good attackers with off the ball movement, and low crosses is also used when your strikers just don't have that height advantage. In the final third, you have options where you can work the ball into the box, be more patient in trying to get the ball into the box. This can result into your players taking less long shots, but also crossing the ball less often as well. Hit early crosses is basically what it says on the tin. Your wider players will look to get the ball into the box as quick as possible, and this is a good instruction to catch your defenders off guard and shoot on sight. Again, it says what it does on the tin. When your players are around the edge of the box, they will be looking to shoot when they see an option to do so. So this instruction isn't something that's very silly, where your players will look just to shoot regardless. When they see that opportunity to do so, rather than trying to play in someone else, they will look to shoot and have a shot at goal. This can be useful if the opponent's goalkeeper isn't too great. If they don't have great reflexes or great handling, shooting on sight can be a useful tool. And of course, if you don't score directly from your long shot, you can score or pick up that vital rebound. Play for set pieces. You are asking your players to win the set piece. You can be asking your players to win a throw-in, a corner, or simply just a foul. So for example, if your winger is dribbling down those wider areas, they may look to play off a defender for a throw-in. That can allow you to get your tall defenders in the box for a long throw. Or again, similarly, if you are looking to win a free kick in those wider areas, that is a very good tool to get your central defenders in the box if you are very strong at your set pieces. For dribbling, if you use dribble less, your players will look to use that pass first mentality. Once they are on the ball, they're going to look up and look for a pass rather than trying to dribble it towards the goal. Dribbling more or running at the defense will ask your players to use their dribbling skills, running at the defenders, maybe beating one or two. This is a great tool to draw in fouls as well, so you don't necessarily have to play for set pieces if you want to win fouls, but also it can be a great tool to win penalties as well. If your attackers are running with the ball into the box, defenders may not be great at tackling and therefore may give away a foul or a penalty inside the box. For creative freedom, this affects players mostly in that final third area. Basically, what you're asking them is to be more free and not necessarily worry too much about the team instructions. So for example, if you're asking your team to work the ball into the box but at the same time asking them to be more expressive, they aren't necessarily always going to be looking to work the ball into the box. They may actually look to use their individual brilliance or skill to try and create a chance for you. And be more disciplined is basically the opposite of being more expressive. You're asking your players to follow your team instructions in a more stricter manner. Now for the transitional instructions. When the possession has been lost, you have two instructions. You can either go for counter press, where your team will look to win the ball back as soon as you lose it, and you have the option to regroup, so when you do lose the ball, your team will be looking to get back into the defensive shape, looking to be more difficult to be broken down. This also depends on your shape and your formations where those players are positioned. For an example, for regroup, as you can see in the 4-4-2, that is asking our two strikers and our four midfielders to drop deep back in the defensive positions, most likely because the fullbacks and the central defenders are already positioned in the defensive areas. For counter press in the 4-4-2, you can see here your wingers, your central midfielders and your attackers will be looking to press more aggressively once your team do lose that ball. Now in the 4-3-3, we can see that things are slightly different. So your strikers, your wingers and your central midfielders on regroup will look to be getting back in a defensive position, but not necessarily your defensive midfielder, because already he is positioned in his defensive positioning. But for counter press, as we can see, your defensive midfielder now wants to join your team in pressing and trying to win that ball back. And now for when possession has been won, if you are looking to play on the counter attack, then counter will be the instruction for you. This will be instructing your players to get further forward as soon as you have won the ball. So as soon as you win the ball, your wing backs, your central midfielders, your wingers and your striker will be looking to advance themselves into attacking positioning. And you also have the option to hold your shape, which suits more of the possession based style. Once you do win the ball, your fullbacks, your central midfielders, your winger and your strikers will take the more patient approach in getting further forward. They will look to hold their position and maintain that formation shape. Now when the goalkeeper's in possession, you have two instructions. You can either ask them to distribute the ball quickly or slow the pace down. Distribute the ball quickly also helps you increase your tempo. So once your goalkeeper has the ball, as soon as he has the ball, he's going to be looking to release the ball straight away, increasing your tempo. But this can also initiate some counter attacks. And to slow the pace down, you're asking your goalkeeper to slow the pace down a little, be more patient, but also this can run down the clock. If you're in the dying moments of games and you're trying to waste time, then asking your keeper to slow the pace down can be a very useful tool for you. You can also ask your goalkeeper to distribute the ball in certain areas of the pitch. Now if you're focusing down the flanks, you may want to ask your goalkeeper to distribute the ball down the flanks, looking for your wingers, or you can ask him to distribute it to your fullbacks. And similarly, if you want to focus through the central areas, you can ask them to distribute to your centre backs, or you can look directly asking them to kick the ball long and again make use of his height advantage. Another useful tool if you're playing against someone like Liverpool, Manchester City, who do play with a high line, you can ask them to look to distribute it over the opposition's defensive line. So if they're trying to catch you offside, you can have your advanced forward or your poacher, someone operating on the last line of defense and asking your goalkeeper to launch that goal kick, trying to beat that offside trap. This again can be a very useful counter-attacking tool, or you can simply ask your goalkeeper to look to distribute it to your playmaker, who is the player that is dictating your tempo for you. For distribution type, you can roll it out, where you are looking to roll it out to either your fullbacks, your central defenders, or your playmakers. You can throw it long to your fullbacks or to your flanks again if you are focusing down those wider areas, or you can throw it long to your centre backs depending how high they are. So if you aren't playing out from the defence, they aren't necessarily going to drop deep to try and receive the ball, so you can throw it long to your centre backs, but that may be a bit too risky, or you can throw it long to your playmaker. Taking short kicks is similar, so instead of throwing it long, your goalkeeper will be looking to use his feet instead, or you can simply ask your goalkeeper just to take that long kick, again either to your flank, to your target man, or over the opposition's defensive line. So that there wraps up the transition. We can now look at out of possession. Now for out of possession, this is all about how your team behaves without the ball. When using the offside trap, you are trying to catch your opposing strikers offside. So basically what you're asking your defenders to do is just step up a little bit, trying to catch that striker offside. This works better or well when you are defending higher up the pitch. If you're defending lower or closer to your goal, it's very unlikely that you will catch your opposing striker offside. So for the offside trap, this works better when you are defending higher up the pitch rather than closer to your goal. If you are defending closer to your goal, it's very unlikely you will catch a striker offside. So this would work better when your defensive line is a little closer to the halfway line, not necessarily on the halfway line, but if you are defending higher up the pitch, then offside trap would work better for you. But when using this, a lot of people do not take the goalkeeper into consideration. Now, for me, when you are using the offside trap and a high defensive line, you need a goalkeeper with very good communication. Without communication, your defensive line and the offside trap can be a complete mess. So when you are using the offside trap with a high defensive line, make sure you keep an eye out on your goalkeeper and their communication. Your goalkeeper is also very important, for me at least anyway, for the defensive width. So for example, for the defensive width, when you are forcing the opponents outside, you're basically forcing or allowing the opposing team to operate down those wider areas. If they do operate in those wider areas, they may send in a lot of crosses. Again, command of area and the aerial reach will be important in your goalkeeper claiming those catches, and also your central defenders being very good in the air so they can deal with those crosses. But for the defensive width, basically you're asking your team to defend in a more narrow shape and allowing access in those wider areas. And when you are forcing the opposition on the inside, it's basically the opposite, but your players will position themselves or orientate themselves to allow the opposing team to attack through the middle and come into the middle, and this may be your trap. So it's not necessarily you're just allowing them to attack through the middle. Maybe that's where you want to force them, because it can be a trap where you have some great defensive players like a ball winning midfielder, and this is where you can win the ball in those areas or where you are most comfortable in winning the ball. But this can also be useful if the opposing team's main threat is to operate down those wider flanks. Then of course you want to force them inside where they aren't most comfortable with. The defensive line is all about how closer or further away from your goal you want to defend when the opposing team has the ball, and the line of engagement is all about where you want your first line of pressure to be. So if you want to force and suffocate your opponents, then you would go or opt for the much higher line of engagement with the higher or much higher defensive line. That way you're asking your team to press right away as soon as the opposing team has the ball or looking to play out from the defense. Your strikers, your attacking players will look to close down the ball right away, trying to get your team on that front foot. But if you drop your line of engagement, you could be asking your team to be more compact, having little space in between your lines for the opposing team to operate. But if you drop your line of engagement backwards, you can be inviting more pressure onto your side. If you want to go for a more counter-attacking approach, then the line of engagement wouldn't be high. But if you want to be more intense and operate on the front foot, then you want to start pressing right away. Using tighter marking will ask your players to engage in tackles or defensive duels to anybody around that player's area. So for an example, your right back will be looking to engage any attacking player that approaches his right back area. And the same for your left back. Anybody that approaches your left back's area, your left back will be looking to mark tighter and look to engage in a tackle or a defensive duel. And without the tighter marking, but also dependent on other tactical instructions, you can be allowing the opposing player to receive the ball in space without being approached. Now for your trigger press, this is when your players will start to press once the opposing team has breached your line of engagement. So this is also going hand in hand with your defensive line and your line of engagement. So for example, if you're defending deep but with a much higher trigger press, that might be counterproductive. Whereas if you're looking to win the ball higher up the pitch, then a much more often pressing trigger may help, with you winning the ball back early as possible. And pressing less often or much less often doesn't actually mean your team wouldn't press at all. It just means they will pick their times and moments when to initiate their press. So last year it was all about pressing intensity, but now they've renamed it to pressing trigger. So it's all about timing and when you want your players to press. There's always going to be a trigger, and trigger press should be used carefully as well. The higher you go, the easier it is for your players to get tired, but also that can cause injuries. So you should use the trigger press with care, especially if you are using the higher defensive line and the much higher line of engagement. The press and trigger should be used carefully. During the 90 minutes, make sure you keep your eye on it and your players' fitness. If you notice they are getting tired too quickly, then make sure you drop the trigger press by 1. Preventing the short goalkeeper distribution, basically you're trying to get the opposing team to either kick it long or make a mistake. Basically you're asking your attacking players to cut off all the passing lanes for the opposing goalkeeper. This is making it more difficult for the opposing goalkeeper to play out from the back. This can force a mistake if he chooses to attempt to play out from the back, or it could just simply force a long kick and cause of turnover in possession. This doesn't mean it's always going to work, and if you are using 4 players to man mark, if the opposing goalkeeper does make a good passing option, all your 4 players could be then taken out of the game and making it easier for the opposing team to get at your defense. So again, make sure your tactic is set right, and if you are watching the game and you've noticed that the opposing team have played out way too easily whilst you are using this instruction, then maybe I would recommend you to remove it. Lastly, for the tackling, getting stuck in, you're basically asking your players to be more forceful in the challenge, and basically again just engage in a tackle, trying to win the ball back for your team, and that can actually result in your players going to ground, making that slide tackle, but also a risk of giving away a free kick. Stay on feet. Basically you're asking your players to stand up and stay on their feet, trying to not get them beaten too easily, but in that case you may not win the ball back as urgent as you may need. So a lot of these instructions work hand in hand. They work well with other instructions. Some may be counterproductive. Again, if you are using a much urgent pressing trigger but a low defensive line, that may be counterproductive. If you are playing very direct, looking to take advantage of your target man but also playing out from the defense, that again can be counterproductive. Whereas if you're playing that nice tiki-taka football, being more patient, play out from the defense may be for you. But unfortunately, that wraps up this video. I hope this video has helped you create your own tactics, or at least understand what certain tactical instructions mean and when to use them. My name is RDF. It's been a pleasure recording this video for you guys. Don't forget, if you are enjoying my type of content, make sure you hit subscribe, like the video, as that helps this channel out a lot, and also leave a comment for any video or tactical ideas. I'll see you guys soon. Stay safe, peace out, and one love.